Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Jon and I are back from the frigid north, which was actually not that frigid, kind of a little weird coming in November. We went up and saw our Mavericks play the Duluth Bulldogs up there. And Jon, how was your trip home, your trip up there? Why don't you tell the fans about your wonderful experience?
Well, you hesitated there when you said the Duluth Bulldogs, and I'm assuming you were wondering.
I almost called them the Maroon Loons. I really
Yes,
honestly did.
their secondary mascot, the Maroon Loon, made an appearance for the first time at a game in 15 years. And I got to tell you, that costume looked like it had been sitting in mothballs for 15 years. But yeah, nice trip. It was our second time going to watch a UNO series in Duluth, Minnesota. And it's a neat town right there on the coast of Lake Superior. We stayed at a Fairfield Inn on the lake side of their iconic aerial lift bridge. And that bridge, it's really fascinating. This structure, just like it's got the little bridge goes up and down to allow boats to come in and out of the harbor there. And I was recording a walking video for my walking channel on Saturday, and we happened to get to see a ship leave the harbor and a ship come in. It was really interesting. I find stuff like that fascinating, and it's kind of neat. It's a very kind of industrial area there, right around the shore where the Amsoil Arena and some of the other fun things that they have around Canal Park there. So it's a fun time going up to Duluth for a series, and you should definitely consider it. How was your trip up? We got to leave Thursday night, so it was a little bit more relaxed for us. Your daughter Maddie had show choir practice, so you guys left 7 a.m. Friday morning to go up to Duluth.
Yeah, bright and early. A short stop in the Twin Cities to pick up Lexi and her roommate and bring them along for the trip. So it was nice to have them with us, and then finished it out. It's only like a couple hours from the Twin Cities up to Duluth, and so we didn't do the hotel route like you did, having that many people, and we got an Airbnb, and so had a nice little house to kind of hang out in for a little bit. But we spent most of our days, our Saturday, out and about, and went up to a small town about a half hour north of Duluth called Two Harbors. We've taken family vacations there before, and so it was fun just to kind of hang out there. And that's right on the lake, and so we got to walk around the lake and well, along the lake, I guess, not around it. It's too big to walk around, that's for sure. Although there is a hiking trail that will take you all the way around, apparently. Yeah, but we hung out there, and so had a good time, and then got to see two really good hockey games, which I'm sure is what everyone is tuned in to listen to, not about our escapades around the hockey games. So let's talk about Friday night and jump right into that. It was an exciting start to the game for UNO.
I will tell you what, Jason, before we get to that, I would like to thank our founding members for their support of the Mavpuckcast this season. See, I
I
circumvented.
forgot we hadn't done that yet.
I know. It seemed like we've been talking forever here. Uh,
Podcast over.
exactly. As I am talking, you are seeing a scroll of those who have become founding members for the 2025-26 season. Their names will also appear at the end of each episode of the Mavpuckcast. We really appreciate the support. Helps defray some of our costs putting together this podcast every week, and some of the hosting expenses, et cetera, that we have for the podcast, for the website, et cetera. So we really appreciate it. So visit mavpuck.com/join if you'd like to join. But Jason, I completely ruined your intro there. So give us the little intro here for this Duluth series this last weekend.
I can't give it to you. I forgot it already.
Jason forgot it. Friday.
I move on the fly here, dude. Come on.
I gave a moment of thought there. I thought, I'm just going to let Jason go with this. We won't mention the founding members. And I'm like, they're going to be disappointed if we don't mention them.
No, we have to mention the founding members. They're awesome.
Absolutely.
so used to you like getting it out of the way and then I can just keep going. And I forgot that we totally went off on a tangent to get started. So,
Well, we
yep.
talked about our trip, and I got to tell you, hockey trips are fun, and we really encourage fans to go, like we did this last weekend. It was a big series up there for UNO and Duluth, facing the number 3 Bulldogs. You know, they're a team that has been down the past few seasons, but they're having a resurgence. It looks like, at least early on this season, and UNO was coming off getting swept by North Dakota at Baxter Arena last weekend. We knew we were going to need more consistency from the Mavs. There were some things that they're still working on that we knew might be trouble spots for them going into this series. But 5:58 into the first, Joel Plant puts UNO up 1-0. Assist to Brett Highland, who was back in the lineup this weekend. It was a neutral zone turnover that led to that goal, and it was Plant's first career goal as a Maverick, Jason.
That was exciting. I guess I didn't realize that I thought he had one earlier.
I
So,
did too. I did too. And then Bridget told me that UNO had sent out that it was his first career goal. I wonder if he
huh.
scored in that exhibition we watched against Air Force.
And he's been a solid player for us. We've talked about him a couple of times. Just, really good positioning. I think a lot of the team, needed to get to the middle of the ice, and he got there and buried his opportunity. And so you're thinking, hey, this might be, the kind of game that UNO steals. And unfortunately, I think that it was kind of like it was downhill for Omaha a lot after that, especially in that first period of just kind of falling back into some of their usual. Um, Issues. Like there was a lot of passes to skates, guys missing lead outs, turnovers in our zone, and that just kind of really hurt us in prior games. And so I didn't like where we were trending after such a good start and getting that first goal.
Yeah, and shot differential's been a big issue so far this season, and it's tough when you're on the wrong side of that. So it's 1-0, UNO after one. And as you alluded to, second periods have been tough for UNO this season. 158 into the second. Ty Hansen ties it up for UMD. And then 412 into the second, Joey Pierce puts UMD up 2-1. Unfortunately, that goal went off Joe Grammer's skate. First 2 goals for UMD, Jason, came from that top line everybody's talking about with the Plant brothers and Jason Shagabe.
And I mean, even before that, the Plant brothers, both of them had really good scoring opportunities uh, late in the first. And so it just seemed like it was only a matter of time before they kind of hurt us. And they're a hard line to lock down, and we said it was a key. Like the key was finding a way to limit their opportunities, limit high danger opportunities from that line, and then just force the depth of Duluth to make it through a game. And the teams that have done that have found that the depth may not be there. And may not be as reliable. The Friday night game was kind of a little bit all over the place with Duluth. They got scoring from a lot of different areas, defensemen coming into it and getting them involved, and so that makes a big difference in how you strategize and defend against that. And we just didn't really have a good answer. But the nice thing is that after that second goal and Duluth takes a lead, it's a pretty quick comeback for Omaha to level the playing field.
Oh, absolutely right. 433 into the second. Jacob Slipek puts UNO up 2-1. Nice effort on that transition goal by Slippy there, Jason. So again, we were thinking this is going to be one of those back and forth kind of periods that we've seen a lot of recently from UNO.
Let's mention the transition game that the capitalizing and converting turnovers, particularly neutral zone turnovers for Omaha. When we force teams to do that, converting those into scoring opportunities has not been a strength of ours. And it seemed like a pretty inconspicuous kind of play that was kind of set up, but it was just a really good shot by Slipek to sneak that one by. And you're back to it. You're into you're into the second period. You still have plenty of time, and you're feeling pretty good about at least being tied against the team caliber of Duluth. And we just needed needed to get back rolling and more puck possession. And unfortunately, we're still getting outshot, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, 8:43 into the second. Callum Arnott puts Duluth up 3-2. So it's 3-2 Bulldogs after two. And that was the like one goal that came from the non-Plant Brothers line for this team. And you talk about what an advantage that is, especially in the early months of the season, that they have that top talent intact back this season that can form that top line for the team. It's one of those things. UNO lost their top 4 point producers from last season, and I said to Bridge a number of times, if we had our top 4 point producers back from last season, we would have a really good top line too. What's going to be interesting to me about this line, Jason, is to see if this line can carry them as far as they hope that it can carry them. Because once January rolls around, a lot of these teams in the conference are going to have gotten things figured out, whether we're talking Omaha, whether we're talking Arizona State, even a team like North Dakota, Western Michigan. And so the question is, once everybody else figures it out, and if those teams have three lines clicking, is this strategy going to work for Minnesota Duluth? Because so far they've kept that line intact when I went back and looked at the line charts. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether they can get the other lines producing in the same manner as that top line or whether they're, a one note piano.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they contend with teams that are more on their level, And I know that fans are going to hate me saying this, but like what we saw on Friday was a top-ranked team playing a team that's not top-ranked. I don't think we're the bottom of the league by any stretch of the means. I think we're still in conversation for, a top 20. You go on a run and you could make the NCAA tournament. Like I think that's where Omaha sits. Duluth right now has shown that they belong in the top half in the, pretty sure they're going to make the tournament kind of conversation. And we'll see what happens when they start playing other teams that are in that level. I think of like Denver, right? Like Denver's capable of playing a run and gun system. They can, if you want to get into a 12-11 shootout with them, like good luck to you because they've got the talent to do that. You want to do what Duluth did to Omaha and play the body, finish checks, a lot of tight checking stuff. They outbodied us on a lot of things, beat us to pucks on Friday night. You want to play that game against Denver, Denver can play that game and they can beat you at that game too. So when you start playing teams like that, North Dakota that we saw the weekend before, another team that really played physical against Omaha and found success. And so I don't think you can go into Duluth or or go into North Dakota or have North Dakota go to Duluth and expect that same kind of we will just, North Dakota just come and bodied them away. I think this team's capable of playing that against those. But we'll see because proof is in the ice. Like you got to get out there and do it. I can think it all I want, but we got to see them perform to that level. But they're talented. They proved it, and they proved that they can score and continue to score, even when, like we talked about last week, everyone knows shut down the top line, and they don't seem to have the depth to support them. But yet somehow you can't seem to do that.
And another plant, Victor, is going to be joining them soon. So
Don't think we just get through this year because they've got another one of them coming, and it'll just be the plant line. And I know they're gonna have to have a third mascot. Maybe they'll shop a horse plant or something.
yeah, we'll see what else they have in the closet. Maybe there's a tertiary mascot sitting around somewhere too. Third period Friday, Mavs were getting outshot 32-16 going into the third. 22 seconds into the third, Jason. Ty Hansen gets his second goal of the game and puts UMD up 4-2 on the power play. Our PK unit right now is in the bottom third of the NCAA this season, Jason.
Yeah, that was tough. I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin too. Just the way we'd been playing. Usually a two-goal lead in the third, I'd be like, all right, so there's a chance. Like, you just got to push back. But like just the way we'd been playing, I think that was kind of this is it. This is not our night. It's not going to happen for us. And we still struggled going through that third. And I don't think we ever really like we had opportunities here and there, but we never really had a good push where you had sustained pressure, you kept them on their heels, you really felt like, you were fighting back against Duluth. to use the boxing analogies, like we threw some punches, but we never really got them along the ropes or had them feeling like there was a chance that they couldn't get out of this kind of thing. Like it was just like we'd land one or two punches and that was about it.
Yeah, the team's still going through the motions as the coaching staff tries to figure out what combination is going to work for the team. And we've seen this before with UNO teams, especially early in the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how things start to gel when the first of the year rolls around. But 8:30 into the third, Ty Hansen gets his third goal of the game. Hats fly. He puts UMD up 5-2, and Duluth goes on to win 5-2. So a tough outing. You know, you're coming off two losses against North Dakota the weekend before. You lose this one. I know fans were going into panic mode online, Jason. But Saturday was a new game. Looking to salvage something from the series. Freshman goaltender Dawson Cowan was in net, getting his second start of the season. His other start came in that entertaining series out at Colorado College a couple of weeks ago, and it was scoreless after the first period, Jason.
The team could have been like the fan base and started to panic a little bit. And so you're always worried coming into that. You know, you've lost three, what I'd say are defining games now in a row, and that doubt starts to creep in. And so I was really looking for them to kind of come back and say, you know, we really talked about it moving into the series. We deserve to be in this conversation. We're going to prove that, you know, we can play to that caliber. And I think the important thing from a fan base perspective is to realize that this team is close. Like there's a lot of times when we talked about this when we were watching the games, right? Like it's the right play, it's the right pass. That's what they should be doing. It's just it's in his feet instead of on his stick, you know, or it's just a little bit too far ahead of him. You know, or you're not looking where you're passing, or you look too much where you pass, or you know, there's quite a few goals. I mean, I can think of at least three of the goals that Duluth scored, um, where we got caught watching the puck. You know, I'm looking at all five of our guys looking to that side, and no one sees the guy that creeps in, you know, maybe off of a change off the bench, or you know, there was one where he just kind of wrapped high around the zone, and it's like he's coming in on the back door, and no one from our team picks him up, right? And they're you just can't give these teams easy goals like that, right? So like the bounce back is to say like, hey, look at this, like we're here, we were level with them. You know, into the second, we got the first goal. You know, we had some success. We just need to clean things up. And to your point, that's where the UNO teams have been in the past, where you're just kind of trying to like tread water for this first half of the season. You hit that holiday break, and you know you come back second half, and you're focused on just NCHC conference play, and you know this team starts putting it together. And if they start putting together, it could be exciting to watch this team.
Yeah, 15 new players on the roster. And again, I know we've had seasons where we've had a lot of new players on the roster, but we also didn't have kind of that returning core group that was, you know, like top line type guys back this season for UNO. And that does make a difference because it's basically like watching a brand new team. So I think they'll
And it's
figure it. Yeah.
different bringing people in from the portal and bringing kids in from junior hockey and North American hockey. Like that's a different equation than bringing in so many kids that are international. You know, it's a different beast. And you know, I think you and I talked about it. I don't think we talked about it on the pod last week, but there are times where I've watched these guys and I've been like, oh, don't do it. Don't drop the gloves. Like you can't hear. This league doesn't do that. And you know, people who watch pro hockey or come from an area where, you know, all you had was junior hockey or something, you come to Omaha and you start following this team and following college hockey. Like a lot of people have said to me in the past, like, why don't they drop the gloves? And I'm like, that's used to be an automatic suspension in the NCAA. There's no review or anything like this. Just fighting wasn't allowed, right? So it's a different kind of game. And so finding that, like Coach said in his interview, right? Like he's that kind of even keel. Don't get too high, don't get low, to kind of keep these guys, you know, in the middle and stuff. And like I think this team, more than any team we've seen, has a tendency to kind of go on the highs and the lows. And so if coach is trying to spend this first half kind of leveling these guys out and finding that way to be pesky, physical, but not, you know, overly aggressive kind of thing, then, that's what we're kind of working through. And we just got to see how these players kind of react to a new game and new environment and new tendencies and heavier hitting. These NCHC teams hit hard, so you got to come out ready.
Yeah, it's a little like herding cats at this point, Jason. Second period, Saturday night, 157 into the second. Miles Hillman puts UNO up 1-0. Good net front work by the Mavs. Gavin and Slipek both had assists on that. So it was 1-0 UNO after two. Duluth had some good opportunities during that period, during the first two periods. One goal was waved off for goaltender interference, thankfully.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
take
this is the kind of way that UNO was going to win this game. Tight defense, responsible play. What Gabnet preaches a lot to us is, guys that are responsible know how to play, know where to go, know, that kind of defensive play. And then capitalizing opportunities, getting pucks to the net, getting bodies to the net, and then just banging away at stuff. That's where we got our goal. That's how we got that lead on Saturday night. This is kind of like you were feeling like if they can keep this going, if they can just avoid the big plays, keep everything to the outside, uh, you know, has a chance if they can kind of bang one in. I was really looking at that point in time to the power play and saying like we need a power play to kind of connect. We need something to give us some, momentum and put some pressure on Duluth. 5-on-5 is a hard place to generate opportunities, and so, looking at some of our power play opportunities and stuff, we needed to kind of, convert on one of those.
Yeah, absolutely right. So 1-0 UNO after two. Third period Saturday. 6:51 into the third. Omaha's Marc Lajoie puts UNO up 2-0 on the power play. De La Gorgendier fires it in from the blue line. Lajoie gets the tip. I'll tell you what, Jason, even though the two-goal lead is called the most dangerous lead in hockey, the Mavs held on to win that game 2-0. As you said, it was kind of a good gutty win, gut check time for the team. And it was a good rebound for the Mavs to get some points out of this series and get something positive out of this series going forward.
Yeah, they got what I was looking for in the third with that power play goal. Same kind of thing, puck to the net, tips, rebounds, those types of things. Like this team's gonna thrive on that stuff, and then they really did a good job of limiting high quality opportunities. Even when Duluth pulled their goaltender and tried to make that final push, you saw our guys do a really good job of play defense inside out, push things to the outside, keep stuff there. Really good job diving for pucks and fighting for things. And, I commend that work ethic of like, leave it all on the line, find a way to do this. And then just some really, really good saves by Cowan to keep us in there when we did have breakdowns or pucks went, to weird places, bounce around at times. Like he made some high quality saves out there.
Dawson Cowan, good looking goaltender out of the CHL. Glad to have him in the lineup this season. As I mentioned, Saturday's win ends a 3-game losing streak for UNO. Mavs are currently tied for fourth in the NCHC standings with Western Michigan, who we'll get to in a little bit here. But Jason, we've got to talk about our players of the week. Who is your player of the week for the series this last weekend up in Duluth, Minnesota against the UMD Bulldogs?
Yeah, I if it didn't happen the way that it happened, I can see like it's always hard picking goaltenders when they only play one of the two games because we always try to make this a player of the weekend and not a player of the game kind of thing. It's a little bit easier when it's just player of the game because so many players have. We've talked about. I think I said this on the last podcast. I know I've said it a ton of like. There's guys that I look at Friday night that I'm like, oh, they're contenders, and then they just don't have good games on Saturday, or they're not noticeable or something, and so then it's hard to pick them. So it's always hard when it's one game performance, but pitching a shutout, especially against the quality team like Duluth. I Dawson Cowan is just awesome for us on that Saturday, and so I think he deserves his first pick for Player of the Weekend, I believe, because I don't believe you picked him for Cara College.
No, I didn't pick him for Colorado College. That was an interesting series. Obviously, the Friday game out at CC, Simon Lacosi had an epic night, stopping around 50 shots in that, and then Dawson had a good night on Saturday night as well. It's always tough, as you mentioned, to want to pick a goaltender for one game in a series, but I think that this was a really important game for UNO, and I think it's really important that we have an option like Dawson Cowan this season. If the shot differential is going to be what it is this season, if we're going to get outshot, 2-1 or thereabouts in a number of these games, it's nice to have another option in net. 32 saves for Cowan on Saturday night. He is 2-0 as a starter. He has a .944 save percentage and 2.00 goals against average in 2 games. And Jason, you'll remember this when Dean Blaze was head coach at UNO, and there were games when defensive play was lacking. I recall Blaze putting in goaltenders like Alex Blankenberg to send a message to the skaters up front. Don't leave your goaltender hanging out to dry. You've got to get these guys used to the idea that they can't think that they have a crutch back there in a guy like Simon Lacosi who's just going to stop everything for 3 periods. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and finding a way to play the same way for whoever's back there. And that means limiting those shots. We can't, with either goaltender, expect success if we're allowing 50 plus shots a game. And I think it was Saturday that Duluth had like 18 in a period. Um, maybe it was Friday. Maybe it was Friday. But like, yeah, 18 shots in one period is just, it's way too much. You guys have got to find a way to shot suppress at that point in time. And so I think that's a bit of the message too, is to say like, hey, we have to have UNO hockey. We have to play, away, and regardless of who's in net, because it could be either of these guys, you've got to play Omaha hockey, and this is what that means. So and a lot of
Absolutely.
that is just building that to go into the next season, because it can be a real um, it could be a real weapon for UNO to utilize against these teams, because in the past, like, you kind of come in and you're like, all right, we know we're going to see Simon. These are his tendencies. We're going to game plan for, where our shot selection is based on, what his tendencies are and where he lets in goals. And, you know, these teams all have video, like, strengths and weaknesses of players all the time. Um, and so to be able to say like, oh, we're gonna just, switch things up and throw something different at you, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know if he'll do it this weekend in our series preview. I'll talk about it in a little bit probably, but I wouldn't be surprised if Simon doesn't play a Friday night.
Interesting. Okay. It'll be interesting to see if that scenario arises coming up here. It'll be fun to see what transpires with that. Well, I've got to go with one of our favorites as my player of the week. Senior forward Jacob Slipik had 1 goal and 1 assist this weekend. He has 2 goals and 2 assists this season. And Slippy describes himself as a defensive forward, but he's a guy who's kind of one of those unsung heroes. Fans love him, especially the younger fans love Jacob Slipik. But I think Slippy has really elevated his game the past 4 seasons for the Mavericks.
Yeah, he's been a really consistent player for us. I think he calls himself a defensive forward because he's not one that's gonna, be top of the score sheet every night or something. And so when you start getting point production from that level of your lineup, that's a huge thing for UNO. And his work ethic, like, guys diving for pucks and getting to those hard areas to play. He talked in our interview about just trying to be kind of a pest. I'm sure fans from previous seasons remember Brock Bremer and how we used to call him the mosquito and stuff. And that was kind of I think that he's kind of adopted that mindset of just being annoying, but not being, a penalty machine kind of thing. Um, and he's done great on the penalty kill, I thought. I think he's been one of our best forwards on the penalty kill. He likes playing that high area and has been pretty good about breaking up passes across seams. And so good all around, top to bottom, and to see him get some offense. That shot was really impressive, honestly. Like at that level, you wouldn't expect a third line guy, fourth line guy, or something to kind of put up a shot like that. So hopefully he shoots the puck more because if he's shooting it like that, we could use a little extra goal help here.
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, pesky player on the ice. He did put up some points in juniors when he was playing in the BCHL. So we'll see what happens. But what I love about him, he plays with a lot of heart. He loves the fans. He really seems to love Omaha in this program, and that's a really great thing to see. So yeah, we love to see him have a good, solid weekend like that, and we love to be able to talk about him as a player of the week on this podcast, Jason. But we've got to talk about our new sponsor this season. As I mentioned last week, we just keep calling them the new sponsor. I could say like our only sponsor this season. We've been working to get more sponsors. It's a work in progress, but we've got to talk about Wahoo Distillery. Jason, this is a good local business that you've been working with on marketing and promotions, and we're really happy to have them as a sponsor on the Mavpuckcast this season.
Yeah, when we set out to do this, we talked about supporting local and us kind of coming together. We feel like the hockey community with all these events and things with um, the pucks and the hockey fights cancers and things like Leap for a Cure and things like that. Like this is just a great community, and so we like to kind of give back, and these are local places. And so we've been focused on that, and Wahoo Distillery is one of those. They have a cinnamon whiskey and their original recipe, and so it's a good mix for people who are looking for different things. And the best part right now, because nothing's the only thing better than alcohol is cheap alcohol, and so discount code in the description on this podcast will get you a discount. So if you're looking to pipe up and get some gifts for me, some family members or friends, or I took a bottle to a holiday party for work and it went over amazingly. It was the most stolen gift there. So I can tell you from experience that will put you in some people's bright lights. So if you're looking for those types of things, definitely use that promo code, get a bottle. You can have it picked up. You can just go pick it up in Wahoo. Or you can have them ship it to you if you prefer to pay for shipping. But I can tell you, little, don't wait for Black Friday. The deal is the Mavpuckcast promo code, so take advantage of that.
Yeah, start your holiday shopping now. Visit wahoodistillery.com and use that promo code MAVPuckcast, which is also in the description, to save 20%, on that order. And we really appreciate, as I mentioned, the support of Wahoo Distillery this season. We've got to talk about a new thing that we introduced on last week's episode of the Mavpuckcast. Jason's Mavpuck.com NCAA Top 20 for the week of November 17th. And as Jason mentioned, we decided to do our own top 20 list because everybody gets so excited about the media polls out there. And Jason and I thought we're just as relevant as the media polls out there. So we're doing our own top 20 list. We're taking the law into our own hands. At number 20, Jason has Union College. Number 19, Dartmouth. Number 18, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 17, Northeastern. Number 16, UConn. Number 15, Boston College. Number 14, Wisconsin, led by former Omaha Lancers head coach Mike Hastings. Number 13, UMass, a team we got a split with a few weeks ago this season. And at number 12, Minnesota State Mankato, another team we got a split with at Baxter Arena earlier this season. Number 11, Boston University, a team that had a tough loss to Quinnipiac this last weekend, Jason. Number 10, Western Michigan. Number 9, Cornell. Number 8, Quinnipiac, who I just mentioned. Number 7, Maine, a team out of Hockey East that you and I have both been impressed with. Number 6, Penn State. And by the way, if you've never watched the Penn State hockey story on YouTube, it's a really good web series following that team. So I would encourage you to watch that. Bridget and I enjoy watching that every season. Number 5, North Dakota, the team that swept us last week. Number 4, Minnesota Duluth, the team we just played. Number 3, the Michigan Wolverines. Number 2, Denver. And number 1, Michigan State. Jason, do you have anything to say about this week's list? And you can't go through every team, or we would be here 3.5 hours. So we're not going to do that.
I'm gonna save that for a mini episode where all I do is go through the list, huh? Um,
Right.
no, I mean, Dartmouth. I think an undefeated Dartmouth. I still looked at saying like, okay, but are they legit or are they just playing? Like, is it the but they're starting to win games in ways that you just go, okay, this team might actually be for real. And so I figured this week was the week we had to get them onto the top 20, some way. I saw one of the media people last week had them in the top 10, and so I'm not there yet, but they looked pretty good this weekend. Um, so they were there. Yeah, Western Michigan takes a bit of a tumble. Just haven't seen really a whole lot from them that has shown that they're the defending national champs. So we're looking for probably more out of them here as play kind of continues. Denver wins both games on the home and home with Carlisle College, and they did it in a way that they had to win in different ways, and that's I talked a little bit about Denver earlier on. But that's the thing with this team is like they can win in different ways, and so if they can continue to be that kind of team, like that's dangerous. Because it doesn't matter what your system is, they might be better at it than you.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you mentioned Western Michigan, and I kind of wonder if it's one of those situations where they're kind of having a post-national championship hangover a little bit early on in the season. It'll be interesting to see. And Jason, we've got a preview the Western Michigan Broncos coming to Baxter Arena. Broncos are 7-5 overall. They are 3-3 in NCHC play. And as I mentioned earlier, they are tied for fourth in the conference race with UNO currently. So this is a big series, Jason, for both of these teams this weekend. The Broncos are led by head coach Pat Ferschweiler. He is 111, 55, and 4 in 5 seasons at Western. As I mentioned, he led them to the national championship last season. So a lot of talented players, and I'll get to the players in a minute. But Jason, what are your initial thoughts on this series? This is a series going in that there could be a lot of different scenarios and stories that come true in this series, and it's hard to get a read on where Western is right now. It's also hard to get a read on where Omaha is at this point. There's just a lot of question marks going into this series, but there's one thing that we know, and it's that Western Michigan has a very talented roster and some really good recruits on that team.
They do, and it's scoring by committee. You looking up and down their stat sheet, there's not the Plant brothers to queue up on and say like if we shut down their top line, we'll be fine. You know, Everyone's going to need to come out top to bottom in our roster and put together pretty good performances if we're going to beat this team, especially if we're going to sweep this team. I think Simon needs to be better in net. I think he has to be the better goaltender on ice. If he's not, we're going to struggle because their goaltender's not shabby for sure. He's having a good season and putting up a sub 3 GAA, and so but he's not like invincible. It's to be honest, I think Mbarako's a better goaltender, and you saw what we did against him at Carroll College. We're home, so use the fan base, use the fans need to get out to the game, make Baxter loud, give a lot of energy, get this team going. I think we're capable of winning. It's hard to say like this is a season defining, series for either team. But it does put you in a very weird position this early on of if you lose both these games, you know, y- it's going to be hard to fight back into the top four in the conference. And so, I think you're really looking at, you know, two teams that are going to play probably a little bit cautious. I don't think any of their team's going to come out and just go pedal the metal, throw caution to the wind, and just start flinging the puck all over the ice and hoping for something good because it just means too much to both of these clubs.
Yeah, in the month of November, you hate to put too much importance on any series, but this is as big as they get early on in the first half of the season. So it'll be really interesting to see players to watch. Junior forward Grant Slukinski leads the team in points with 2 goals and 12 assists. Junior forward William Whitelaw is second on the team in points with 6 goals and 5 assists, and he transferred to Western from the University of Michigan this season. And you mentioned Caden Mbarico at Colorado College. Well, one of his former teammates, junior forward Zachariah Wisdom, who transferred to Western this season, has 3 goals and 3 assists. And on the blue line, Jason, Samuel Scholund has 3 goals and 6 assists. But as we mentioned, there's a lot of really good, talented players on this team, like Liam Valente and Eero Hakkarainen. And then in nets, this has been an interesting story because one of the things at the preseason media day that was asked of Western Michigan coach Pat Ferschweiler was how he thought sophomore Hampton Slukinski was going to do in net this season, getting all of the reps between the pipes. And as you mentioned, he has a 2.95 goals against average and a .882 save percentage. The numbers are not as good as he had last season. When that team made their run in the second half and in the NCAA tournament, Hampton Slukinski became the guy. He split time last season with Cam Rowe, who was a solid veteran goaltender. In the second half of the season, Slukinski started to become the guy. Well, this season, he's getting it all in net so far. And that's a big question mark, I think, for this team, Jason.
You got to make his job difficult, right? Um, don't make it easy on him. Get shots on him, just like we talked about with Simon. If you're going to try to ride one goaltender through the NCHC gauntlet the second half of the season, then let's be the team that starts it and starts by just peppering them and put them to the test. See if he can actually do it.
Do you think we'll get swept by the Broncos at Baxter Arena? Do you think we'll split with the Broncos? Or do you think we'll sweep the Broncos in this key matchup for UNO here in the first half of the season?
You mentioned how hard it is to really kind of get a gauge on this. I think it's because these two teams are very close to each other. There's question marks, and the question marks are a little bit different for each team. What happens if something, I don't say goes wrong, but like if someone goes quiet and gets a little cold and you're not getting production from your top end guys, are you gonna have that middle six support that you need to win games? Those are the things questions I had at least going into the season. As it pertains to Western for Omaha, it was a lot of like, can can Simon ride the highs from the previous years and stay a top goaltender in the league and handle that when you've had so much turnover on the team and goal scoring, who's gonna do it? Because as you mentioned, we lost so many of our top scorers. So where's that come from? And so far this season, we have struggled a little bit to kind of put pucks in net. I'm looking for a breakout game. I'm looking for UNO. I think if they come out Friday and really put pressure on this, especially if the power play can convert at a higher click than it's been doing. I think if we can get a multi-goal game and you have a big point lead, that could be a recipe for a sweep for UNO. I just haven't seen it yet, so it's hard to expect that to happen. So I think the most likely thing this season for every series, for every team to be anticlimactic is to pick the split. And I think UNO is going to come off a little bit of a high. So if I had to pick it, I'd probably say UNO wins the Saturday game on the bounce back rather than the Friday game. But that's why I say is if UNO comes out and wins Friday, especially if they win by a considerable margin, um, 4 goals or more, then I think there's a good chance that UNO has some swagger coming into Saturday and could find themselves sweeping Western Michigan and staying in the top half of the NCHC.
Yeah, they need to play hard, have fun, do the little things right, which is something that the coaching staff preaches constantly with various incarnations of this Maverick team, and I think they can have success. It's going to be really interesting to see what the line combinations look like this week. It's going to be interesting to see if your scenario about Dawson Cowan potentially starting on Friday night ends up happening. I don't know. It'd be
Right.
that'd be a
I wouldn't
fascinating.
be surprised. I don't know. Here's the thing is like you've got to look from a coaching standpoint and ask yourself when is the right time to make that move. And I don't know that teams are necessarily clued up on it again. I wouldn't be surprised to see Simon if it were me, for this series, it'd be Friday Simon, Saturday Cowan again, and you might kind of ride that for a few of these series. The hard thing is he's coming off a shutout, and so it's really hard to give away a goalie's net when he's doing that. You ride the hot hand when you can, and so. Um, I don't know what coach will do, but I will just say from the fan base, don't be surprised if Friday you get to the rink at Baxter and Simon's on the bench. And don't freak out and go like into the conspiracy theories of like, is he hurt or is he not? It could just be mess with Western's head and try to throw them off their game so that we can get a sweep at Baxter.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if that happens. Certainly, the coaching staff is loyal to Simon. Simon has been loyal to this program. So it's hard not to start him. But it'll be fascinating to see, knowing that this team needs something to kind of spark them, whether the coaching staff will do that. I'm going to be fascinated going into this weekend. And like you, I'm going to be cautious this week. I'm going to pick a split for UNO. I think that that is a very likely outcome from this series, and it'll just be interesting to see. And I have no idea whether we'll get our win Friday or get our win Saturday, but I do think we'll get a win this weekend, and it should be a fun series to watch at Baxter Arena. And like you mentioned, an important series for UNO as we move forward here, headed towards Christmas break and then the all important second half stretch of the season. We really need to see if we can continue to get some points and get some positive momentum in conference play because it's very, very important. And it's the last home series we have, Jason, until an exhibition at the end of December. So be
It's a
nice to.
long stretch without hockey at Baxter.
Yeah, yeah, it's a long, long stretch, and there's lots of stuff going on this weekend, which we will get to. Friday and Saturday's games will be at 7 p.m. Central at Baxter Arena. We hope all of you will come out and support the Mavericks this upcoming weekend. They could really use it. The Saturday, November 22nd game is the Sheila Leahy Toys for Tots. So be sure to bring a toy or a cash donation for that. Members of the U.S. Marine Corps will be on hand to collect those donations. You can listen to the games this weekend if you're not coming out in Omaha on 1290 Coil or online on the Varsity Network app. Mike Valancourt and Terry Leahy will have the call. And Jason, both games will be streaming on NCHC TV. And be sure to follow Mavpuck on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all our social channels to stay up to date during the series. But until next time, Jason, go Mavs.
Go Mavs!